When we wake up in the morning, our first thoughts often determine the direction of our day. If we begin with worries, stress, or frustration, those feelings can take root in our hearts and influence our attitudes. But when we choose to start with gratitude, something powerful happens. Instead of focusing on what we lack or what challenges lie ahead, we turn our attention to the one who holds everything in his hands. Gratitude shifts our perspective from self-centered concerns to God-centered confidence. The Bible reminds us repeatedly to give thanks in all circumstances, not just when things are going well. This is because gratitude aligns our hearts with God's will and helps us see His hand at work, even in difficult seasons. When we acknowledge His goodness, faithfulness, and provision, we cultivate a heart that trusts Him more deeply. Every morning, we have an opportunity to set the tone for the day by acknowledging that God is our provider, protector, and source of strength. Giving thanks first thing in the morning is an act of surrender. It's a declaration that we recognize God's authority over our lives. We are not in control, He is. And that realization brings peace. Waking up with gratitude allows us to release any anxiety about the day ahead, knowing that God has already gone before us. It reminds us that no matter what happens, He is working all things together for our good. Gratitude also keeps us humble. When we take time to thank God first, we acknowledge that every blessing comes from Him. We did not wake up on our own strength, it was His grace that sustained us through the night. The breath in our lungs, the ability to rise and move, the opportunities before us, all of it is a gift from our loving Father. Recognizing this truth keeps us from pride and self-reliance, drawing us closer to the heart of God. Starting the morning with thanksgiving also cultivates joy. It is difficult to be weighed down by negativity when our hearts are filled with gratitude. When we express thankfulness, we train our minds to dwell on what is good, true, and praiseworthy. This doesn't mean we ignore hardships, but it does mean we choose to trust in God's goodness despite them. Gratitude is not just a feeling, it is a discipline, a habit that transforms our outlook on life. Every morning, when we open our eyes, we are given a fresh start. The rising sun is a reminder that God's mercies are new each day, just as Lamentations 3 verses 22-23 tells us, because of the Lord's great love we are not consumed, for His compassions never fail. They are new every morning, great is your faithfulness. No matter what happened yesterday, whether we faced failures, disappointments, or struggles, God extends His grace to us again today. He does not hold our past against us, and He does not leave us to carry yesterday's burdens alone. Waking up with the awareness that each day is a gift from God changes how we approach life. It is easy to take for granted the simple act of waking up, but the truth is that many did not have the same privilege. The fact that we have breath in our lungs, another opportunity to live, and a new day to walk in His purpose is a testimony to God's sustaining power. He is constantly renewing us, giving us strength for what lies ahead. His mercies are not leftover blessings from the day before, they are fresh, tailored to meet the needs of today. Acknowledging God's daily mercies also reminds us of His patience and love. He is not a distant God who is quick to punish, but a compassionate Father who longs for us to draw near to Him. He knows our weaknesses, yet He continues to pour out grace upon us. Each morning is a reflection of His long-suffering nature, His willingness to forgive, and His desire to walk with us through every moment. When we recognize this truth, we are less likely to dwell on past regrets or carry guilt that God has already removed. God's mercies are not just about forgiving our past but also equipping us for what's ahead. Each morning, He gives us the strength, wisdom, and courage needed to face the day. Whether we anticipate challenges or joys, His mercies prepare us. He supplies exactly what we need, whether it be peace in times of trouble, patience in moments of frustration, or guidance when we feel lost. When we acknowledge that every new day comes with God's hand upon it, we can step into it with confidence, knowing that His mercies are more than enough. When we begin our day with thanksgiving, we are not just forming a good habit, we are inviting God's presence into our lives in a deeper way. The Bible tells us in Psalm 22 verse 3 that God inhabits the praises of His people. This means that when we approach Him with gratitude, we create an atmosphere where His presence can dwell. Thanksgiving is more than just an expression of appreciation, it is a gateway to experiencing God more intimately. It shifts our mindset from simply asking God for things to acknowledging what He has already done. Gratitude is a form of worship that opens our hearts to recognize God's work in our lives. When we take time to thank Him first, we are positioning ourselves to receive His guidance, peace, and strength. Instead of rushing into the day with a list of worries and requests, we are choosing to acknowledge His sovereignty. This act of surrender allows us to walk with greater faith, knowing that the same God who provided for us yesterday will continue to provide today. Giving thanks also draws us closer to God because it aligns our hearts with His. When we express gratitude, we are shifting our focus from temporary struggles to eternal truths. We remember that God is in control, that He is good, and that He is working all things together for our benefit. This perspective allows us to trust Him more fully, even when circumstances seem uncertain. Thanksgiving is an act of faith, a declaration that we believe in God's promises even before we see them fulfilled. When we begin our morning by thanking God, we cultivate an awareness of His presence throughout the day. Gratitude keeps our hearts sensitive to His voice, making it easier to recognize His leading. It transforms ordinary moments into opportunities to see His hand at work. Instead of being consumed by busyness, we become more mindful of His blessings, both big and small. Whether it's the beauty of creation, the kindness of others, or the strength to face a challenge, gratitude helps us see God's fingerprints in every part of our lives. Expressing thanksgiving also strengthens our relationship with God because it deepens our reliance on Him. It reminds us that we are not self-sufficient but completely dependent on His grace. A grateful heart naturally leads to deeper prayer, increased faith, and a stronger desire to walk in obedience. Gratitude has the power to transform the way we see our circumstances. Life is full of challenges, disappointments, and unexpected difficulties, but when we choose to give thanks first, we shift our perspective from problems to possibilities. Instead of dwelling on what is wrong, we begin to see how God is still working, even in the midst of our struggles. The way we start our day influences the way we respond to everything that happens. If we begin with frustration or anxiety, we carry those emotions with us. But if we start with thanksgiving, we set the tone for faith, hope, and trust in God. When we focus on what we lack or what is not going according to plan, it is easy to become discouraged. But when we focus on God's goodness, our mindset changes. Gratitude helps us recognize that every challenge is an opportunity for growth, every setback is a setup for something greater, and every hardship is a chance to depend on God's strength rather than our own. It does not mean we ignore difficulties or pretend everything is perfect. Instead, it means we choose to trust that God is in control and working all things for our good. The Bible tells us in Philippians 4 verse 8 to think on things that are true, noble, right, pure, lovely, and praiseworthy. This is a deliberate choice. When we fill our minds with gratitude, we guard our hearts against negativity. Complaining magnifies problems, but thanksgiving magnifies God's power over those problems. When we give thanks, we acknowledge that He is greater than any challenge we face. Gratitude also protects us from comparison. It is easy to look at others and feel like we are falling behind or missing out. But when we thank God for what we have, we stop focusing on what we don't have. Contentment comes when we recognize that God's plan for our lives is unique and perfectly designed for us. When we shift our perspective in this way, we stop striving to keep up with others and start trusting in God's perfect timing. A thankful heart sees beyond temporary struggles and focuses on eternal truths. It reminds us that God is always faithful, even when circumstances are uncertain. It strengthens our faith and allows us to walk in peace, knowing that God's plans are greater than anything we could imagine. When we make it a habit to thank God first, we open ourselves to His blessings in ways we may not even realize. Gratitude is not just about expressing appreciation for what God has already done, it is an act of faith that positions us to receive even more from Him. Throughout Scripture, we see that a thankful heart invites the favor of God. Jesus Himself demonstrated this when He gave thanks before multiplying the loaves and fishes. His gratitude preceded the miracle, showing us that thanksgiving is a key that unlocks divine provision. God desires to bless His children, but often, our posture toward Him determines how much we are able to receive. A heart filled with gratitude is one that is open to more of His goodness. When we acknowledge that everything we have comes from Him, we become better stewards of His blessings. We stop taking things for granted, and we begin to see His hand in every part of our lives. This attitude of thankfulness keeps us humble, reminding us that our successes, our provisions, and even our very breath are gifts from a loving Father. Thanksgiving also shifts our prayers from being primarily about requests to being more about relationship. Instead of only coming to God when we need something, we come to Him with appreciation for what He has already given. This deepens our connection with Him, making our faith more vibrant and personal. When we take time to thank Him first, we are acknowledging His past faithfulness, which builds our confidence for the future. Gratitude strengthens our trust in Him, reminding us that He who provided before will continue to provide. God honors those who honor Him, and one of the simplest ways we can do that is by maintaining a thankful heart. When we thank Him first, we are demonstrating that we trust His plan, even when we do not yet see the outcome. This kind of faith pleases God and positions us for His blessings. Instead of striving in our own strength, we walk in peace, knowing that God is our source. He sees our needs before we even ask, and when we approach Him with a grateful heart, we align ourselves with His will, allowing Him to work in ways beyond our expectations. The way we begin our morning has a direct impact on the rest of our day. If we wake up feeling anxious, frustrated, or overwhelmed, those emotions can set the tone for everything that follows. But when we start our day by thanking God first, we create an atmosphere of peace, joy, and purpose. Gratitude shifts our focus from what is uncertain or stressful to what is constant and true: God's presence, His faithfulness, and His unchanging love. When we choose to thank God before doing anything else, we are acknowledging that He is the source of our strength and the foundation of our day. This simple act of thanksgiving reminds us that we do not have to face the day alone. No matter what challenges lie ahead, God is already with us, guiding our steps and providing everything we need. Expressing gratitude in the morning is like setting the direction of a ship. It determines the course we will take for the rest of the day. Gratitude also brings joy. It is impossible to be truly thankful and remain discouraged at the same time. When we take time to reflect on God's goodness, our hearts are lifted, and our outlook becomes more positive. We begin to see even the smallest blessings as reminders of His love. This does not mean that every day will be easy or free from struggles, but it does mean that we will face those struggles with a renewed perspective. Instead of being consumed by problems, we are strengthened by the awareness of God's presence and provision. Starting with thanksgiving also deepens our dependence on God. It reminds us that we are not in control, but He is. Rather than stepping into the day with self-reliance, we step forward with confidence in His guidance. When we begin with gratitude, we are less likely to be shaken by unexpected challenges because we have already placed our trust in the One who holds the day in His hands. A morning rooted in gratitude also leads to greater kindness, patience, and love toward others. When our hearts are full of thankfulness, we are more aware of the needs of those around us. We respond with grace instead of frustration, and we carry a spirit of peace that influences those we encounter. Our attitude becomes a reflection of God's goodness, allowing His light to shine through us in every situation.